Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer, and today I welcome Vinny Altamirano, who is the General Manager for GHL USA. Vinny, welcome to the show, man.
I appreciate it, Keith. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, this was really cool of you to do this, and I know these are trying times for everybody, and I'm sure you're really busy, but yeah, I think we'll have a lot of fun, have a little conversation. Maybe kind of start off about you and how you got into the hobby, the business, and we're also going to look at a former tank of yours and talk about that.
Yep.
And then we'll get into the nuts and bolts in terms of GHL and what's going on with you guys. So how you doing these days with COVID-19? You're managing through this nuttiness?
Yeah, I mean, we're just taking it day by day as best as we can do, you know.
Yeah, no, it is really bizarre. What's going on in California right now? I mean, it's pretty much things are easing right now in terms of restrictions.
It's easing, but they are sure taking their sweet old time with it. So yeah, just little by little, you know, things are reopening. We are getting back to somewhat of a normal way of life. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, it's weird. In Vermont here, it's kind of like I think a lot of people got cabin fever for the first couple of months and kind of chomping at the bit to get out. Now that the weather's really nice, it'll be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting. But yeah, everybody out there, stay safe and be smart. But so Vinny, let's kind of start in terms of how you got into. Let's first start in terms of how you got into the hobby. And then maybe you can, gravitate in terms of how you got actually into the business and working for GHL. So what's your story?
Sure. So my story began back in 2003. Before 2003, I'd actually had a freshwater tank. And what led me eventually into saltwater was a friend of a relative was giving away a pretty big tank. It was a 55-gallon tank, which at the time to me was a pretty big tank. With my freshwater setup, I had just a 29-gallon tank, so we're talking almost twice the size here.
Wow.
And they were giving away the setup. And so I figured, okay, well, I have two choices at this point. Do I want to upgrade the freshwater system, or do I want to give something else a try? And so I'm curious by nature, so I decided to step into the world of saltwater, um, and that's basically where it all began. And I started off with a 55-gallon tank, with the usual hang on back filter, no sump. tried to do what I can to make everything work, and just learned along the way. And um, eventually, I stumbled across the forums. Reef Central was the first forum that I came across, and it was through that forum that I learned a lot of what I know today. And along the way, I'd also picked up a few jobs working at a local fish store. Um, One of them was working in Greenwich, Connecticut, at a store called Greenwich
I'm
Aquaria.
very familiar with
Um,
Greenwich Aquaria.
yeah,
I used to
yep.
go there all the time
And
back in
over
Connecticut.
Yeah, and over there, that's where I learned a whole different perspective of the hobby in terms of the business side of things. Because just being in the hobby, I learned how things worked out on the consumer side, and now I had a perspective on the business side of things. Um, yeah, and working there, that's when I learned different methodologies about keeping a tank. Because there's definitely more than one way to go about maintaining a tank. Um, and when one day I everything must have worked out nicely that I came across an opportunity to work with GHL, and Matthias approached me, and he said he's looking to have someone um, run the U.S. company. And yeah, I put my foot in the door, and I said, hey, I'm interested. I'll give it a shot, and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, no, that's a great
And
opportunity.
yeah, and one of the things that really drew me towards GHL overall was the fact that I had used their products since 2008. So within 2 years of starting the hobby, I had already had exposure to GHL products, and we're going back to the Profilux 2 controller, before the 3 and Ever 4 was even thought about. Um, and so through the years, I've seen the product develop. I've seen a lot of improvements added along the way, and I've learned how to best use the product to suit my what I'm looking to do. Um, yeah. So yeah.
The Greenwich Aquaria, the owner of that place, Jason Edwards. I haven't been there in a long
Mm-hmm.
time, but the show tank in that store is just how many gallons is that show tank? It's huge, right? It's
Yeah, it's about a 600-gallon system overall. The display tank itself is about 500 gallons. So it was I believe it was a 5 foot long by 4 foot deep tank. So
yeah,
yeah, there was a lot of space to cover
yeah.
in that size
Jason's
tank.
a great guy. He
Yeah,
knows reefing really well, so that must have been a
absolutely.
great place to work. But
Oh
so,
yeah.
how long have you actually been keeping saltwater reef tanks?
Well, I'm going on almost 15, 16 years.
Well,
I've been in the hobby, and starting off with that 55-gallon tank, I eventually moved on up to a 75-gallon tank. Had that one for a few years, and while I had that tank, I had to move, and that's when I realized the struggles of trying to keep everything alive during a move.
it's not easy.
uh, that was quite the learning experience, to say the least. Definitely challenging. But yeah, and after that 75-gallon was up and running, I decided to retire that and set up a uh, custom 67-gallon tank, which was made by Miracles, and that was a tank where I decided to start using more GHL products on there to
This is the tank
better.
that we have the video on, right? All right, let
Yeah,
me
yep, that's the
I'm
one.
going to start playing that video. Why don't you talk about the tank and the setup and the equipment?
Okay, sure.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, this was a tank built by Miracles. It's a 67-gallon tank. It's a 3 foot long by 24-inch by 18-inch tall tank, rimless. And this was a tank that I decided to run more, to focus more on GHL products. And in this tank, that's where I ran the Profilux controller. I ran 3 dosing units because I dosed quite a bit of supplements with this system. And it was a predominantly acro. It was an acro dominated system. I had a few Zoas here and there, a few LPS, but my main focus was Acropora, because quite frankly, Acropora is my preferred type of coral. I find that to be a challenging yet very, very rewarding when you get it right type of coral. Yeah, and this tank was up and running for about 6 years.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and the photos in the video that's playing right now is basically what it looked like on the second go around. And by second go around, I don't mean that the first go around failed. It was just that the first time around, I had enough growth, and it got to a point where I was kind of winding down with the hobby, and I wanted to do something to kickstart that excitement again. So I decided, instead of an upgrade, because an upgrade wasn't feasible at the time, there just wasn't the space for it. I figured, what better way to kickstart the excitement of the hobby again than to tear it down and start it right back up.
The colors colors in the tank there, Vinny, are just incredible. What so you were dosing 2-part? Is that what I'm understanding, and some other supplements?
Yeah, it was. As far as supplements and bacteria goes, I was running exclusively fauna marine products. So I was putting in fauna marine amino acids, trace elements from them. I was feeding different types of powdered foods, not through the dosing pumps. These were manually fed. I was putting in different types of vitamins from their lineup, and I was also doing their version of the balling light method, which is your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium supplement. Yeah, it was a pretty extensive system. And as far as lighting goes, when the tank first began, I was running a hybrid light. It was a T5 LED combo, and it was during this time that the current Mitras LX7s came out, and I decided, let me give that a try, and see how that works out. And so I set up 2 Mitras LX7s. These are the 7206 6 cluster lights. I set these over the tank, not really knowing what to expect. I've had experience with working with LED lights and such, but it was with these lights that I was able to really fine tune and do a lot of experimentation to figure out what type of spectrum, what type of lighting duration was most suitable for the types of coral that I was keeping. And it basically took about 6 months of experimenting and somewhat playing around with the par meter. I don't put much emphasis on par, but throughout the 6-month experiment, just tweaking light schedules and such, that's when I found a suitable combination that gave me both a combination of color and growth. And of course, with stability, with the dosing of the amino acids and the trace elements, and all the other supplements involved, that definitely played a major role in getting the colors that I have.
So this is kind of like a good launching pad for a discussion about lighting. And you mentioned that you use the the Mitras over this tank. Was it just the Mitras, no T5 hybrid type of lighting, just solely the Mitras?
100% LED.
So obviously there's a lot of folks out there that are fans of the the Ecotech lights, the Ecotech LED lighting, and that's got a lot of people that use those lights, and you don't see a lot of folks with the using the Mitras, but there are people out there that use them. And in terms of what you're showing with your tank, it's just to me it's certainly evidence that the LED lighting does work for SPS, and it can work really, really well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to LED, I think it's 100% doable to replicate the results that you would get out of a T5 or even out of a metal halide. When you're dealing with LED, it's a double-edged sword. You have so much customization at your fingertips. It just leaves a lot of room for error, and that's where tools like the par meter and using other proven existing projects will really help you out in finding the type of spectrum and light schedule that works best for an individual system. Yeah, that's.
Talk about Vinny, the difference between the Ecotech and the Mitras. What kind of differences are there between the two lights?
Well, with the Mitras, the light, in terms of light spread, the way that the light is emitted and the spread throughout the tank, the Mitras takes a different approach from other LED fixtures out there, mainly in the reflector design. Because when you look at the underside of the Mitras, you're not going to find any optics, and the reason for that is because we found out that when you use optics, you end up having a lot of hot spots. And when you have hot spots, you run the risk of burning a coral, and that might lead to the impression of, oh, the light is too strong, let me turn it down. And when you turn it down, now you have another coral showing signs of stress, maybe because it's no longer getting the light that it was accustomed to. So when you look at a Mitras and the way that the reflector is designed, what it accomplishes for the hobbyist is it gives you a nice even light distribution. It gives you nice color blending. So it eliminates all of the hot spots. It maximizes the spread of the light. For the size of the fixture, a 6 cluster fixture, which is the LX7206, that's going to give you about a 3-foot by 2-foot spread, and you can play around with all the 9 channels however you'd like, and you are not going to find any hotspots. You're not going to find the disco effect that you would get off of other fixtures that use optics. You're going to get just perfectly blended, evenly distributed light from one fixture. And when you combine multiple fixtures, you get even more concentrated results still without these hotspots, without the disco effect.
Do you see any benefit with using the Mitras with T5s, or do you not think that is necessary? I mean, you see a lot of people out there these days with these hybrid systems. You talked about it in terms of LEDs and T5s. Do you think that's a way to go, or do you think just the Mitras, by themselves would provide that sufficient spectrum, power, what have you, for a reef tank, especially SPS?
I think it's perfectly doable to run a successful tank with 100% LED. If you wanted to add T5s, by all means, it's a proven type of light. It's definitely going to give you the results that that people strive for. I'd say one of the reasons why somebody might want to add T5 to an LED, not necessarily just the Mitras, would be maybe the type of rock layout that they have is casting a shadow over a certain part of the tank, and they want to get more light in that area, but they can't because the LED fixture that they have just doesn't, it just doesn't get there. So by adding those T5s, you are able to increase the light output in that particular area.
Right. All right. Let's transition, Vinny, to another topic, and talk a little bit about GHL. It's just kind of like the company. It's based in Germany, right? But can you kind of talk about the company and the mission, and then we'll circle back on a couple other things.
Sure. So GHL was started in the 90s. It started off the owner Matthias. He started off his company as a manufacturer for electronics and circuit boards, and after a few years of running the company, it evolved into offering aquarium controllers. The Profilux controller was the first controller offered by GHL, the company. As far as the philosophy goes, GHL focuses on just providing the highest quality components possible. How do you do that? Well, the way we go about it is we do all the design, we do the assembly, all the manufacturing happens all under the same roof. And we feel that when we do that, we're able to oversee a lot of these little details which might be overlooked when you outsource these type of tasks to other companies. And with that, we're able to provide a more refined product that you can be assured that it's going to last you 1 to 5, 10 years from now. Especially when it comes to the Profilux controller, the Profilux 2, for example, we still have users using that product. And that's a 15-year-old product, which is still going strong for them. So Profilux controller was the first product offered by GHL, and eventually it branched off into dosing pumps, and that's when the first generation dosing pump came about. And that, just like the Profilux controller, was built to the same degree of quality control. And once that came out, then you had the Profilux 3, and then you had the next generation dosing pump, which was the GHL Doser 2.0, and then eventually we introduced the Mitras LED lighting. And so now overall, when you look at the whole product lineup that GHL offers, we have controllers, we have dosing pumps, we have lighting units. Yeah, we have a pretty extensive lineup to suit a wider range of needs that the hobbyists may have.
Yeah, now a couple of years ago, you guys introduced the KH Director, and I'm running one on my. I also have a Profilux 4, and I'm running the KHD as well. And let me tell you, man, when you're using that adaptive control feature on the KHD, I mean, you could really just lock in to a DKH level on that thing, and that is just awesome to have. Not rock solid alkalinity in a reef tank, and it's just so cool to be able to do that. But I mean, there are a lot of products out there in terms of alkalinity monitoring and controlling. So how does the KHD really compare to what's out there right now?
Well, what the KHD does is, as you said already, Keith, it can test your alkalinity and it can make adjustments. If the KHD finds out that you are a little bit too low or too high on your alkalinity, what it'll do is it'll go into your existing dosing schedule and it'll calculate how much of an adjustment is necessary so that it allows your alkalinity to fall back to where you actually want it to stay. As far as differences, the KH Director, it does not require a controller. You don't need to have our Profilux controller to use it. We offer a standalone KH Director set, which is bundled with a standalone doser. That doser is the brains of the whole operation. It's through that doser that you're able to use the KH Director to do your automated alkalinity testing. As far as testing options go, we don't have a minimum testing requirement. You are free to test on an as-need basis, or if you want to set up automated testing, that's also doable. You can do that anywhere between 1 to 24 times a day. And with every test that happens, the KH Director will evaluate, okay, what is the test result and where do you want your alkalinity? And it'll determine, okay, well, it needs to adjust your alkalinity schedule. It'll determine whether it needs to increase or decrease that dose. And as every test happens, it'll log the data for you. So if you want to go back and you want to check your chart to see how your alkalinity has changed throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, and beyond, you can go back and you can get that data so you can get a better understanding of what your tank is doing on a day-to-day or on a weekly or on a monthly basis. It really helps to fine-tune alkalinity swings.
Yeah, and I see Coral Tank is asking us to talk about the Ion D, and that was going to be my next set of questions for you. So, yeah, what's up with the Ion D there, Vinny?
So Ion Director, it follows a similar concept to the KH Director. Ion Director does not require a controller. You don't need a Profilux controller to use it. If you wanted to use it, as long as you have at least a standalone doser, you will have what you need to actually use the product. As far as testing goes, it tests 5 parameters. It'll do your calcium, it'll do magnesium, nitrate, potassium, sodium, and much like the KH Director, when the Ion Director does its tests, it'll evaluate your current results and it'll determine how much of an adjustment is necessary. So that way, it'll adjust your existing dose schedules to help those parameters fall right back in line to where you want them to stay. As far as the type of technology that's used in the Ion Director, we use a multi-ion probe. The probe that we ended up going with is a custom probe designed specifically for us. So you're not going to find this type of probe anywhere else. It's designed specifically for GHL. And the unique detail about this probe is that it's a single tip design. If you look at other ion sensors out there, you're going to find that they use multiple tips. And what that means is eventually you need to replace these tips. So instead of having multiple tips to replace, when it's time to replace a sensor, you're only replacing one sensor. So it makes it a lot easier to do maintenance and servicing on the Ion Director.
How long does the sensor last?
Sensor will last you anywhere between 6 to 12 months. It really depends on the water quality. It also depends on how often you're testing. because with any probe, the more often you use it, the more wear and tear it's exposed to. So 6 to 12 months is what you can expect to get out of it.
What's going to be the price point for the sensor?
Sensors will be about $79.
Okay. So Coral Tank, you and I are right in sync, thinking alike here, because the question is outside chance for phosphate to be that fifth element measured on the IND, and that was going to be my next question as well.
It's a possibility. It's the hardware on the ion director was designed with expansion in mind, and phosphates are one of those parameters that we're striving to include at some point. The main challenge that a lot of manufacturers face is, because us hobbyists want to measure phosphate, and these values are so tiny. A lot of these sensors struggle to read such small amounts, and if they can do it, can they do it reliably?
Yeah.
And because our philosophy is to really focus on a reliable product that works, we're going to keep searching and searching until we find that product that perfectly fits our needs. So that way, when the time comes to release a phosphate testing unit, it'll be available, and the hobbyists can count on it working when it needs to work, and it'll do it reliably and accurately.
Well, I for one will keep my fingers crossed for that, because that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it too.
So Vinny, the IND was supposed to be released in the springtime, and you guys did push it back to the fall time. Why don't you talk about why you did that, and are we still on track for a fall release?
Yeah. So the IND was supposed to be released earlier this year, but none of us expected a virus to break out and to do what it did, and unfortunately that had an effect on manufacturing and supply chain issues, and it caused supply chain issues. One of the final components that we were waiting on to finalize the ion director was our custom probe. Without that probe, we can't have a completed product. so with that, GHL was stuck waiting on that sensor to be delivered. So on the meantime, while we wait for that delivery to come about, because the supplier of the sensor hasn't been able to give a concrete date yet. So while we wait on that sensor to be delivered, we decided to add more capabilities to the ion director. So we ended up going back and modifying the existing product. We're not going back and starting from square one. We're modifying the existing product, and we're making changes like making it more cost efficient, to do tests. We're making the testing, the time that it takes to do the testing, it's quicker now. We're making it use 3 dosing pumps instead of 4, because originally when we announced the ion director, we were saying you would need to use 4 dosing heads to run it, because you would have 1 head for your water sample, 2 heads for your reference A and B solutions, and you would have a head for your wastewater. Well, now, because of the ongoing delay, we decided to see how we can make the unit more efficient. And one of the ways we did that is by knocking back 1 dosing pump, and now utilizing only 3 heads. So what that means is now you only have one head for your water sample and your 2 pumps for your reference A and B solutions. The reference A and B solutions, by the way, is the solution that the probe would use to do the automatic calibration, which, by the way, is another unique feature of the ion director. Like other testing stations, such as the KH director, the ion director does not require any type of calibration of the sensor itself, because the system does it automatically for you. Just before a test happens, what the ion director will do is it'll use the reference A and B solutions to calibrate the ion sensor. So that way, by the time that calibration is complete and your actual test begins, you're testing with a freshly calibrated probe, and that's going to get you the most accurate results possible.
Where's the wastewater going? So you don't have the 4th head, which was for the wastewater. How's the wastewater getting discharged?
So the way it's going to work is you have the water sample pulled in from your system, and all this happens after the calibration of the sensor is complete. So after the calibration is done, you have your your water sample pump pulling water from your tank and putting it into the measurement cell of the ion director. The test happens, and after the ion director gives you your results, that same head which took the water from your tank will then run in reverse, and it'll put that sample water right back.
Oh, okay. So it's just reusing the water.
Yep.
Oh,
Correct.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Are you guys confident that it will be a fall release, or is it still kind of like fingers crossed because of what is going on with COVID?
No, we're confident in a fall release. You know, the reason we haven't provided a concrete month is because there's still a lot of uncertainty going on with our suppliers and with them not being able to tell us when we can expect the final components to be delivered. It's tough to say, okay, well, we're going to have the ion director on this specific month. That's why we went for a more wide range launch date, and that's why we said the fall time.
Well, folks, it is in production right now, and Vinny, you have a video that we're going to play to prove it. So I'm going to play that.
Yep,
I'm going to play that, and then we'll come back after that and just talk a little bit more about that. So let me roll this.
Okay. It's all automated. It's all done under the same roof,
And
so we get to keep a close eye on things.
We're back, man. That was I'm getting really excited now, Vinny. That how many of those have you guys cranked out so far?
Quite a bit, quite a bit. We have a nice pile going on there. Like I said, just waiting on the final components to come in so that we can have a final product ready to ship.
Do you want to kind of talk about what we were looking at there in terms of the machinery?
Yeah. So the headquarters in Germany is completely fitted with all the on-site equipment to do all of the machining, all the soldering, all those type of things are automated, all under one roof, and that allows us to maintain tight quality control standards, and it also allows us to create a more refined product. Instead of counting on instead of outsourcing and counting on them to hoping that they did it right, we get to do it ourselves. We see how things work out, and if we need to make any changes along the way, we do it right then and there without counting on anybody to do it for us. Yeah.
So we had another question, and folks, by the way, definitely chime in with any questions in the chat. We'll I'm kind of like cruising through there and looking at your comments and what have you. So feel free to ask Vinny any questions that you would like. I see there's another one from Coral Tank. He's asking, or she, is there a maximum length for the sample line from the tank on the ion?
It really depends on the rise and the run of the tube. For the most part, if we're talking about a horizontal distance, you could do about 40 feet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it comes down to the capabilities of the pump itself, not so much of the ion director. So the pump itself could pull from that far away,
Gotcha.
and it could send it into the ion director for its testing. Yep. And as long as the head is calibrated at that length, by all means, it's certainly doable.
So the Trident is another, piece of equipment out there that can do similar things. Can you talk about the differences between the IND and the Trident? The Trident is actually in the marketplace now, but yeah, just touch on that, Vinny.
Yeah. Well, Trident and IND, they both use different technologies. With the Trident, I believe there are some reagents involved in there, and with the ion director, there are no actual reagents. Instead, we use reference fluids, and these reference fluids are only used for calibrating the ion sensor. So with the ion director, it's a very low maintenance design. And also, because the ion director uses a different technology, we're able to test for different parameters. That's why we have parameters like potassium and nitrate. And it also opens up the possibility for testing other ion-based parameters. Like phosphate, that's one of them.
Right. Yep. So we have a question from Dragon Slayer about your flow sensors, and is wondering if there's any chance that you guys are going to make any sizes larger than 3/4.
It depends on demand. If the demand is there, it's something that GHO will consider. However, with a lot of from what we see, a lot of people who use our flow sensors end up having 3/4-inch plumbing anyway, unless they have a massive size system or a very large return pump. But even then, we also have some users that have 1-inch plumbing, and they still end up using our larger flow sensor, which is the 9,000 liter per hour unit. That flow sensor will take 3/4-inch PVC, and these same people who have 1-inch PVC, they end up still tying it into their return line with 1-inch plumbing, using reducers, of course. And even then, they're not seeing such a substantial decrease in flow.
Yeah, talk about why somebody would want to actually have a flow sensor.
Well, flow sensors can come in handy for many reasons. One of those things would be, just to get some insight on how your return pump is performing. At the placement where you have that flow sensor, it'll tell you when the flow, or if the flow rate has actually dropped below the point where you want it to stay. If it actually gets to that point, the Profilux will give you an alarm notification. It'll tell you, hey, flow sensor number so and so has triggered an alarm, and this is the flow rate that's currently being reported. So it'll definitely give you a lot of insight. And in terms of tying in a flow sensor with pumps, you can do that through the 1 to 10 volt interface. So any return pump that can be controlled through 1 to 10 volt, you can control the flow rate of that pump using the flow sensor. So if you tell the flow sensor, okay, I want this return pump to run at 2,000 liters per hour, that flow sensor and the Profilux will make sure that the speed of that return pump is automatically adjusted for you, so that it maintains that constant 2,000 liter per hour flow.
So I think I know who this guy is. Rehobo Victory Rider says his flow sensors control his Red Dragon RD3 100. I think you know this person as well too, but yeah, no, they're a great thing to have to be able to monitor the what you're just talking about in terms of the external pump. I've never actually used one, but now I'm kind of intrigued. I'm just
yeah, and it also comes in handy to tie in a flow sensor with media reactors. Because over time, when we add in things like GFO and carbon, it's going to get clogged up over a certain amount of time. And when you have a flow sensor at the output, the flow sensor is going to pick it up. And when it gets to that point, the Profilux is going to tell you that the flow has dropped, and that's going to serve as a key indicator for telling you when it's time to replace your media reactor. Because people that don't use flow sensors with their media reactors, they might just religiously change their media every 4 weeks, not knowing that maybe in 3 weeks' time the flow rate has dropped, and therefore the media is no longer as efficient. So by having a flow sensor tied in, you'll get more insight and know when it's actually time to replace the media, or at least clean the media reactor.
So, Vinny, we've talked about the IND, and that's a new product that is going to be coming out in the fall time. You guys, released the KHD. We talked about that. You just had an upgrade. How long ago was the Mitras light upgrade? Was that a couple of years ago?
It was about 4 years.
4 years ago.
Almost 4 years ago. Yeah.
Any updates for that in the works, or is that not in the cards right now?
Well, it's not in the cards right now because, quite frankly, with the way that the light performs, there's really, not much more that you can add to it. I mean, with our light, you don't need a diffuser because because of the design that's used in the reflectors, it accomplishes that diffuser-like effect. So it's already there in terms of light spread and blending.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm just looking at some more of the comments here.
Sure.
One thing I've also heard about, when you're comparing the Mitras to other fixtures like the G5 and the Atlantics, in terms of the diodes, can you talk about the diodes and the fact that there's I've heard more blue diodes in those other fixtures than there are in the Mitras. Is that true? And why is blue so important, I guess?
Well, the corals utilize the blue spectrum the most, but of course, to a certain extent, you can get to a point where the corals become photosaturated, and you can keep blasting it with blue, and you're no longer going to see much benefit from it. But in terms of the ratio that we use in blues, we do focus more on the bluer end, and it really depends on which fixture we're talking about, which one we're comparing it to. Because I do know that the G5s, they have two different versions, where they have one that focuses pretty heavily on blues, and then they have another one which is I believe their standard design. With the Mitras, we focused more on the bluer end, but still maintained a nice balance between the warmer side of the spectrum, because that spectrum also has its benefits to the coral, especially in terms of pulling out reds and greens.
So, Vinny, we've had a couple of questions about supply in the USA for GHL products. What's going on with that? I know that there's certain products that supply is limited. Can you talk in terms of will that work itself out in the next few weeks once things kind of settle down with the COVID thing, or is this something that we're going to have to kind of manage for a couple of months?
Yeah, we throughout pretty major increase in shipping volume, which makes sense because inevitably, a lot of people are spending more time at home, and because they're home, they're just spending more time on working on their tanks. So with that, we're seeing a lot more volume coming in, and we're ordering in from Germany a lot more often and in much larger quantities. But of course, we have scenarios where that we don't have control over, such as how long it takes for our shipment to arrive from Germany, because when it gets to customs, we don't have control over those type of things, and not to mention that because of the virus situation, there's just less flights going out to the U.S., and so it creates this natural bottleneck of shipments, and it just creates a bottleneck of shipments, and that just means that it takes longer for a prepped pallet from Germany to actually leave Germany and get to the U.S. So we are seeing increased shipping times, but like I said, we're doing what we can to get everything out as soon as possible, and this is only temporary. Once things get figured out with the virus and shipping comes back to normal, we're going to start getting more consistent volume of orders, and we're going to start shipping them out much quicker.
Yeah, I mean, when this stuff really hit the fan back in beginning of March or middle of March, the factory was shut down for a while, right?
Germany continued producing.
Did? Okay.
Yeah. When Germany does their manufacturing, they order in large volumes. So they they did have enough on hand to hold them over through the first several months of when the virus was, first came about. So because of that, we were able to maintain a decent momentum of orders coming in, and also orders going out to our customers and our dealers. Yeah.
So Dragon Slayer is asking some questions about the Maxi doser, and the question is, he has a 50-foot run for the Maxi doser to do an automatic water change. Should the pump push or pull the water, or does that matter?
It's probably better if it just pulls.
Pulls.
Yeah. It's a slight difference. I mean, it also depends on whether we're talking about a 50-foot horizontal run, or if there's a vertical run somewhere along the 50 feet. There's a lot of variables that come into play. I mean, if we're talking about just a straight run across 50 feet, that's fine. It wouldn't make a difference whether you push or pull fluid. It'll all work out.
Yep. All right, folks. Yeah, no, keep asking those questions. Great questions. Vinny, what else can we talk about here in terms of things that you guys have in the pipeline? Has there been any talk about the Profilux 4 in terms of doing any redesign on that, or again, is that kind of like stuff really put to the back burner right now?
Well, the Profilux 4, to this date, continues to get updates. So there's still new features that are coming about with the controller hardware itself, and also on the app side of things. With the app, we've seen a massive improvement just in the couple of years on the types of things that you can do through the app, that you couldn't do 2-3 years ago. So to give you an idea, with the app nowadays, you could pull a Profilux out of the box, and you will not even need to touch a Windows computer to get it up and running. You can get it. You can set it up directly through the app, and we have YouTube videos to show you the different ways that you can get your P4 up and running for the first time. So if you're a Mac household, you can still set up a P4 controller. You can do it through a web browser. You can do it through your app. It doesn't matter whether you have an Android or an Apple device. It's all doable. So there's a lot of improvements that are still in the pipeline for the app, which is called GHL Connect. One of those upcoming features is going to be a push notification feature. It's going to work in line with the My GHL cloud service, and what it'll do is whenever the Profilux picks up an alarm, since it's connected to the cloud will then link up with your phone, and it'll notify you when you have an alarm notification happening. So that means you don't necessarily have to be connected right then and there to your controller. You can just you'll feel the vibration on your phone, and it'll tell you, hey, your Profilux controller has an alarm activated, and it was triggered by this sensor or by anything.
So, Vinny, do you think at one point in time you will not need GCC, GHL Control Center, or will that always be a part of the Profilux 4 and doing updates and that sort of thing? Or I guess not necessarily updates, but
yeah, it's gonna GCC is here to stay. We are moving more towards a mobile based platform, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna get rid of GCC, because quite frankly, why would we get rid of another way to access the controller? So if somebody wanted to access the controller through a Windows computer, fine. The option is there whenever they want to go that route. If they prefer to work with the controller or make adjustments through a web-based platform, fine. You have that option. If you want to do it through the app, that's also another option. So yeah, to answer your question, GCC is going to stay. That's also going to get continuously improved along the way as we start to release new features for the app, GHL Connect.
So you guys retired the Profilux 4 Ultimate set, and the Ultimate set compared to the Mega set included that touch display pad. Any plans? I think this was a question that one of the viewers was asking about. Any plans to have another touch display, or can you just use a small iPad to serve that purpose?
Yeah, you can certainly use an iPad. Yeah, any tablet for that matter can accomplish the same type of tasks that you can do from the touch display. The touch display itself, it was a decade old product.
Yeah.
So especially once the GHL Connect app came out and that started getting more and more updates and becoming more developed, um, we saw more people falling back to the app and counting on the app to do things with their controller and to trigger certain commands and using their touch displays less and less. So we decided to discontinue it again because it's a decade old product. But we do have something planned at some point to come out with a new generation touch display. But we have other products ahead of that project, which we have, which we're planning to put out.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, I started using the P4 a couple of years ago. I was an Apex user, and my whatever you want to call it, display, touch, whatever it was, crapped down on me on the Apex. So the units just kind of like started showing signs of age, and I only had it for like 3 years, and started crapping out on me. But that was also about the time when they released the new Apex. But I love the Profilux. It's great because there's no complicated coding. You got the drop down menus. I find it pretty easy to use. I don't go crazy in terms of a lot of logic here and there, but I just kind of like handle the basics. I do water sensors on the floor. I'll have a feature where if I lose power, make sure that the return pumps will kick on 5 minutes after the power comes back on, so they're not going to siphon back or whatnot. So, I found the transition. It was definitely tough. There were some growing pains because when you're used to one thing in terms of Apex and transitioning to the Profilux 4, it definitely was not very intuitive for me at least. But now that I got through that, I find it great. And I also use the KH Director and the Doser 2.1. So I mean, I'm a GHL fanboy, but full disclosure, I also sell your stuff, and I think I see a couple of my customers on the live stream, so I appreciate you guys tuning in. But yeah, I think it's just high quality stuff that GHL makes, and it just helps you run a better aquarium, and if you can have your life made easier in reef keeping, that's a good thing in my book.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things, just to touch base on the Profilux 4, what sets it apart is the fact that when you want to expand or build upon the existing system, the way that we go about things is with the use of expansion cards. And with that, instead of going out to buy a module and then finding a place to mount it, we offer the expansion cards, which you would just pop into the housing itself, which means you're not taking up any extra space. You don't have to worry about mounting anything else. Really, you have nothing more than just popping in the card and connecting the accompanying sensor or the cable to it. Yeah, so it makes for a much quicker expansion route, cleaner setup, less wiring involved. Yeah, it just makes for a much more space saving design. Yeah.
So Vinny, we're getting kind of close to the end here. I'm just looking through some of the comments here again, and Dragon Slayer is asking about the Abyss GHL controllers. Is that a possibility? If you guys carrying that, being able to control those?
Those cables are manufactured through Abyss, so they would be the best ones to pick those up from. I mean, we don't really see a need to make an Abyss cable when there's already one out there.
Gotcha.
That's our stance on it.
Gotcha. So Vinny, any final thoughts? Any thing you want to leave everybody with there in terms of GHL and what to expect down the road?
Well, we have a lot of surprises down the road. Good surprises. We're definitely very much looking forward to the release of the Ion Director, and then other products that we have in the pipeline for this year. Yeah, and as always, if anybody has any questions, we're always open to a phone call. If you want to have a discussion about what you have and you have a question about a product, I'm more than happy to go over things with you and answer any questions you might have. If you want to take a look at the products, we have a GHL YouTube channel. It's called GHL Advanced Technology. In that channel, you're going to find a whole load of how-to videos. So if you've never delved into GHL products, that channel would be a great way to get some exposure to it and get an idea of what it's like to work with the products. And, of course, if you have any questions, you can always contact us and we'll answer those questions for you.
Yeah, the best way to do it is to contact you guys and open a support ticket, and that'll get the ball rolling, right?
Yeah, or if you want to just shoot us over an email. If you have a question about a particular product or you need help picking out a certain product for your setup, you can always just send us an email at sales@GHLUSA.com.
Cool. All right. Well, Vinny, you're getting a lot of kudos here from the viewers, and everybody's really appreciative, including myself, for you again being a guest on the show. Really enjoyed having you and hearing more about what's been going on and what's coming down the pike for GHL. So, thank you, man. Appreciate it, and hopefully,
I appreciate it, Keith. Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll have a trade show coming up at some point in the near future where we could hang out again, but. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Might not be happening for a few months.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in tonight. And again, thanks to Vinny. So my next show will be on June 28th. That's a Sunday at 7 p.m. And my guest will be Greg Carroll, a very accomplished aquarist. So I'm sure it's going to be an awesome show, and I hope you tune in. So until then, be well, be safe, and we'll see you next time.